I decided to make a quick video explaining how I did my volunteer hours in 9 days. In the province that I'm in, you have to accomplish 40 full mandatory hours in order to graduate, and I ended up doing them last minute because of a virus that is swarming around, and it was the safest time that I could do so. So I hope you enjoy. You may be wondering why I ended up taking so long to get them done and why I did them last minute. Besides the virus, I actually planned on doing them during my summer of my freshman year, and I didn't because of the virus. And then I waited and I waited and I waited, and here I am doing them almost last minute. The only way I could do it during the summer, which is what I intended to do, was if I did it this summer, because I can't really do it the summer after I graduate. So I was very annoyed with how little time I had to get it done, but I decided that I might as well get it done while I can. So we'll just get a quick insight about how that went, which it went alright, but I can't recommend it. So I obviously waited a while to volunteer, and at this point my brother was actually old enough to volunteer with me. He's younger than me by a couple years, but he is starting high school and he's allowed to volunteer. I was trying to figure out where we should volunteer since he can't work in certain places because of his age, and I found a garden, and in my small town there's not much available. But I thought the idea of volunteering in a garden would be a bit easier and a bit nicer since I don't often go outside unless it is to garden in my own home. And so I thought, this might be better, might be easier. I'll learn a little bit more about gardening, I'm sure, while I'm there. And I can interact with people, but at a safe distance. Also, you might be wondering how I ended up getting all of 40 hours done in 9 days when, you usually shouldn't be working that much when you are as young as I am, I guess. And I ended up just doing really long hours. I volunteered for 9 days. Most of the shifts were 5 hours long, a couple were 4, and one was 2. So I'll get into a little bit more detail about that. I actually thought that I was going to be volunteering on a Monday for my first day. And I woke up, I got ready, I was very nervous, I was feeling very nauseous, and I didn't really want to go at this point. And I was just getting out of the shower, and my mom goes and tells me that the garden says we shouldn't volunteer today because it is pouring. And it wasn't really pouring, it was only slightly raining, but it was supposed to rain for a couple hours, so we decided to stay home. So I didn't even get to volunteer on my first day. And then we had a couple appointments come up, so I wasn't actually able to volunteer until the Thursday, but there was an appointment right after that Thursday as well. So that was only a 4-hour shift. And I'll get into the details about my actual first day, which was actually quite nice. I showed up with my brother, and we set our bags down. We met with this random guy, and he was actually super sweet. He was basically just telling us how things were going. We got a tour of the garden. It is very large for the location that it's at. Like, quite a, like lots of rows of stuff, and the variety was nice. So he showed us everything, and then we were just basically picking strawberries for like 4 hours until we had to leave. And I thought that was quite interesting because when I pick, you know, anything, usually I'm not getting the large quantities that they have, but there were so many there. It was actually crazy with how many strawberries they had. They did end up trimming it all back after a while because they weren't doing very good after, it gets like super, super hot, which it was just a couple days ago. And with the amount of mold that was growing on them, it would have been bad if it spread to the other staff. So, but still, my first day was actually quite nice. I was quite excited about continuing to volunteer there. There's a couple rough spots in the next couple days, which I'll explain to you, but for the most part, it wasn't too bad. The second day was also a bit more eventful than some of the other ones that are going to be talked about, because my brother didn't actually show up this day since he was not feeling very good. He was tired and wasn't very motivated, so he ended up staying home. And I went for my first 5-hour shift by myself. I ended up just doing strawberries for a while with this group of people, and they left pretty early on. And I was with the same person as the first day, and he ended up just showing me how to trim back tomatoes and stuff, which I'd never done because in my house, if we end up growing tomatoes, which we typically do, we usually just let them be since they do well enough and we don't need a large quantity of them. But it was interesting to figure out what exactly I should cut back and what I shouldn't cut back. And then afterwards, I ended up picking 2 baskets full of strawberries for myself, and my dad and I later ended up making a pie out of them, which was pretty fun, and it was good. So I had a pretty good second day, even though I was by myself and pretty nervous and not very comfortable with anyone that I was near, but it was pretty nice. On the third day, my brother was back. We ended up just doing more strawberries and then a decent amount of peas. Not much really happened, so sorry for the lack of, you know, content for day 3, but not much ended up happening. On the 4th day, we had loads of tomatoes to do, like so much work. I'm so glad I never have to actually touch a tomato plant ever again because we did tomatoes for basically the rest of that week. We ended up having to trim them all back. We ended up having to then basically put rope on the stakes that was there so then we could pin them up, which we also did, and we weeded them eventually, which I'll talk about that, but it was horrible. We weren't really given gloves. I could have asked for gloves, but we didn't do that for some reason. So my hands were just covered in green and black and brown. I couldn't get the color off of my nails for that whole week. And oh my god, I don't even like tomatoes. I did so much work, and I don't even like eating tomatoes like at all. So it was not very fun. It was a lot of work. It was super hot then as well, so we had to take lots of breaks, but then we just came back and did more tomatoes. It was horrible. But I don't have to do them ever again, which is nice. But I'll continue about the next days. On the 5th day, we ended up doing a couple strawberries, but then went right back to the tomatoes. We also did beets at some point, but I'm not sure what day that was on, but I think it might have been this day or the next day. I'm not sure. But it did start to rain, so we actually ended up having to leave and work in the office for an hour. We ended up just basically cleaning off containers, since apparently they don't get cleaned very often, if at all. And that wasn't very fun, but we did end up going back and continuing to work on tomatoes after the rain stopped. So it was also quite funny because I ended up bringing, well, my brother ended up bringing an umbrella just in case, and we did actually use it, but it was a one-person umbrella, so we were tripping over each other while we were trying to walk. It was very funny, but incredibly awkward and a little bit embarrassing because everyone was watching us trip and fall over each other's feet. But I'm sure it was entertaining for anyone else that was watching. On the 6th day, we ended up just continuing with tomatoes, but near the end, we did end up taking home like 2 containers of raspberries. And I'm not a big fan of raspberries, but I don't mind cooking with them. So I actually ended up making tarts and muffins with them, which was they were really good, by the way. I have never made tarts before, so it was a bit scary, but it was very simple because of the crust I decided to make, which was literally just like brown sugar, butter, and flour, pretty much. And it was very soft and nice. And I'm not usually a big fan of tarts, but we ended up using just literally jam. Like, we already had raspberry jam, and we just ended up putting, well, I ended up doing it, so I don't know why I'm saying we, but I ended up putting the raspberries like covered like a sandwich of jam, but I didn't add any sugar to it because I don't think it really needed them. It's supposed to be a tart, right? It's supposed to be like a cake, so they were a little bit more, well, tart than most stuff I make, because I usually bake cakes and cupcakes and stuff like that. But they were really good. I didn't really care too much about the muffins since it was very strange to have a raspberry muffin with the amount of seeds we had in them, but they were still pretty good. On the seventh day, we ended up bagging up stuff that was laid out on a bench for other people, and then we just continued with the tomatoes. We ended up doing the weeding this day, all day of weeding tomatoes. It was horrible, actually. It was so hot as well. It was like 30 something degrees, like it was like 31 degrees or something outside, and we were out there for 5 hours. I have to say, do not go outside when you have to garden for 5 hours long in that amount of heat. It's not fun, but it could have been worse, I guess, but I definitely did not enjoy it, so. But it wasn't that bad. And then we ended up leaving like half an hour early to go to the office. We were offered like, I don't know, I think it was a freezy and stuff, but I ended up not having them. And we ended up just sorting through like flyers about the garden for 25 minutes ish until my mom picked us up. My dad was there too, which was a surprise because he doesn't usually come to show up for that. He did show up the one day. I can't remember what day it was. I think it was the fourth day or something like that. And my mom showed up the second day to look at the garden, which was quite cool because I got to show it to them, and my parents garden all the time. My mom is very excited about gardening, and my dad is the one who does quite a bit of the actual gardening itself because of how our family works. We all do our own little tasks when we want to, and I help out a lot. Can't say that my brother helps out a lot, but it's still okay, I guess. But yeah, it was cool because I got to actually feel like I was a bit more responsible than maybe I than maybe I actually was. But it was cool. I didn't mind sorting through stuff. It was a little bit easier, and we also had an air conditioning in there, which was lovely because I was so sweaty. It was disgusting. On the eighth day, we didn't actually have that much to do since we were only there for 2 hours. We showed up. They didn't even know we were going to show up, I guess, because they weren't communicating with each other, even though that we told the office building that we were going to be there. And we ended up just basically cleaning off garlic and like peeling the outside so it wasn't covered in dirt and whatever, which actually did take an hour and a half, funnily enough, because there was quite a lot there. But it was probably one of my favorite days because it was only 2 hours long and it was a simple task. And it was pouring, but because we were inside of like this shed, like a half shed thing, we were quite safe from the rain. So I didn't end up getting wet at all, which was nice. Now we're finally on to the last day. Woo! But it actually sucked. It wasn't actually fun at all. So my brother and I ended up showing up, and we sat down at the bench as we usually did. And usually we get told to do something from like one of three people that are usually there. There's the one guy from the first day, there's this other guy, and then there's the girl who actually is more so in charge of the garden, who isn't so much a volunteer but actually works there. And we ended up being told to work at the garden beds from this older dude who, yeah, well, you'll see. He wasn't very nice. He had a big ego. So, but this day sucked a lot, and you'll see why. So we ended up doing the garden beds. I ended up choosing to do the flowers, and my brother had to pull out radishes. I was quite upset the fact that they were actually wasting the radishes because they were turning them into like more dirt or whatever. And they were already so close to being done, so I wanted to call my mom and ask her if she wanted to pick up some radishes since I know that she was still in town at the time. And I got over to my bag and I was looking for my phone, and then I could not find my phone. this this ruined a lot. This is what caused a lot of issues because I then spent the next half an hour trying to find my phone. At some point, I actually thought that maybe these new people that were coming over possibly stole it. My bag was moved over. I later found out that my brother actually moved the bag because he needed to find sunscreen, and I was just getting super panicked, and I was like, oh no, I've lost my phone. How am I supposed to do anything without my phone? Because it has lots of like tracking apps that I need on it for like what sort of food I'm eating and stuff for the doctor, and obviously games and stuff that I like, and all of my personal photos and whatnot. And I was very concerned. I ended up using my brother's phone to contact my mom to have her look. And then it got even worse from there because she told me she couldn't find it, and she wasn't even in the car. She was literally grocery shopping. And she would call my dad to find if it's at home. I knew it wasn't at home because I remember putting it in my bag, which I did that in the car. And I guess at some point it must have fallen out of the bag when I was searching for sunscreen myself in the car because it was right near the door, and I only found that out half an hour later after my mom already said that it wasn't at home or in the car because she didn't check when I thought she was checking. And it was horrible. At that point, we already spent a bunch of time, and we ended up meeting up. She ended up giving my phone back, and then she got like a whole bag full of radishes, which my dad and her planted in the backyard of my house. And we have way too many radishes now. But because we spent so much time looking for that, we didn't end up getting much done, which is what leads to this. So the older man came back, and he was sort of like watching us from time to time to see how we were doing. And he ended up talking like to me and asking where my brother went, and he was actually sitting under a tree for shade because it was super hot and fully sunny. It was horrible. And I called him over, and then he basically just stood and stared at us, and then started screaming and swearing about how slow we are, and that he was working for 25 years at a company, and he would, never see someone working this slow before, and if he did, they'd immediately get fired. And was saying that we all start off with shitty jobs and we have to just do well to get anywhere. And mind you, he's also a volunteer here. He doesn't even work here. He even says that. He's like, I'm not your boss or anything, but this is just too slow. And I was, trying to explain to him about why I was, only halfway done, but he didn't really want to listen, which is fair. But eventually, we were moved over to do the cucumbers, and after that, my brother ended up actually going home because he basically had a heat stroke. He was not feeling very well, and then I had an hour by myself here. And at some point, the old man left to get lunch, and then he came back, and I was quite worried. But I was like, you know what? I only have an hour left. I can probably get this done. And then I actually wasn't even able to do the cucumbers because he had to do some watering and stuff, and he didn't want to get me soaked. So I sat there for half an hour and had a quick snack. And then he was surprisingly really nice after, and ended up basically letting me take home he forced me to take home 5 bags of a variety of food. And we ended up like cooking and stuff with them, which was nice. We actually still have some of the potatoes and stuff. And afterwards, my mom picked me up and I went home. And everything was great because I finally finished my hours. I was so excited about not having to actually go there ever again because that last day ruined it for me. I was quite mad, but very confused because he wasn't even mean afterwards. So I'm thinking maybe he was just hungry or something. And I was in the car and I was in a pretty good mood, but exhausted, and everything was pretty good. At this point, my wrist was already healing. It's pretty much already fine now, but my back was super sore. It still is sore as of making this video. I have not been relaxing at all. I've been busy with cooking and garden work in my own house and cleaning up a little bit, not so much as, some of the other stuff, but still haven't been really taking care of myself that well. But I don't know. I wouldn't recommend volunteering the way I did because it's very difficult. But if you're up for a challenge and still need to get all your hours done, then go ahead, I guess. But it was rough to do 40 hours in 9 days. It would have happened like a bit quicker if I obviously ended up, volunteering earlier, but because I didn't have that much time, I ended up taking longer, I guess. And also, I couldn't get them all done in like 9 straight days because of them being closed on the weekends and the amount of doctor appointments that we have. But it wasn't that bad. It made me respect gardening a lot more because it takes so long to do anything with tomatoes. Yeah, I don't know. But it was interesting. And I can say that I'm now a professional gardener and I don't have to volunteer. Hopefully ever again, which I will probably have to some other time. But yeah, it was neat. And my brother ended up having to catch up from the missing 6 hours that he had this week, which he finished, which is lovely. And now we get to save money on gas and don't have to work and can actually enjoy our summer, which is lovely because we haven't had the time to do that. But yeah, thank you for watching. If you would like to watch more videos of me just rambling and playing games and doing probably the most useless stuff that is on YouTube at the moment, then you can subscribe, or you can run away while you can because the content will be very similar to this for quite some time. I do have a plan to make another video probably tomorrow to either come out Saturday or Sunday. So you'll see that. I'm probably just gonna do a challenge in Project Sekai. So that will be, easier to do than something like this, because this took me a long time to make. But yeah, I appreciate you for listening this long if you are still here. But I might make more of these about different stuff, probably older stories, and not so much recent stuff since I don't really do much anymore. But yeah, I will see you in the next video, which is hopefully coming out tomorrow or Sunday. So bye bye. Thank you for watching.